Hello, hello. How's it going? Music down just a bit here. How's it going, everybody? We got a lot of snow. That's been fun. Very fun to deal with. We got snow and then it got really cold. All that snow froze on everything, and now tree branches and stuff are falling. So fingers crossed that my internet holds out. It hasn't been going out, but it's been like blipping. And I'll lose a string of packets for a few moments there. And I'm already seeing a little bit of that. So we'll see how this goes. We might need to call it early. But we'll see. Not much I can do about it. It's like the whole city, so it is what it is. But today what we are going to be working on is this project has come up a bunch before on stream. It's a project called Finatr, and it is we have it wrapped in a Tory app, and it is a React app in which we are handling like personal finance stuff. So we're doing cash flow analyses, which help you to plan your ins and outs. It's been around for a while. We did a whole bunch of updates, both on and off stream. It's in a much better place, and I'm slowly swapping out how we were handling state. So we're moving from old way to new way. I just realized my camera is really turned. It's gonna be fine for today. It'll be fine. We'll have to deal with it later. And that's been going good. I think this change will be helpful because we will be able to handle changing data and handling that data in a much more async manner. Where before, based on how things are architected and the libraries we were using, we were sort of forced into having to handle much of the calculation and the client-side calculation asynchronous, which meant that a few years back when I was putting lots of hours into it, there was performance issues, and there was no great way to resolve them. Sometimes that happens. So it needed a refactor, but there just wasn't anything in place that felt like it made sense, and that kind of kills the motivation. But we're back with it. I've made a bunch of updates, and now I'll go ahead and flip over here. I have started adding in the new state and wrapping got this little legacy thing here, which is passing in the old state now. But we are now using StarFX. There may be change. It's still a little bit in flux, and there may be changes that we need to do over time. But right now we basically have both going on, which is fine because each currently handles its own thing, and we can still ideally we will be able to like slowly swap pieces out. And until that time, we'll just have both states. So that has been working pretty well. Now, in my updating, you can see here I did a get status. I guess you can't see it too much, but we changed quite a bit, or we updated quite a bit rather, in this PR specifically. Part of that is due to the things that we're touching were either broken or slightly broken through updates over years, and it made sense to just deal with it all. So I've bumped a lot of stuff, part of which is D3js. that comes around to the title here. We have a page which I've dubbed icicle chart because it is an icicle chart. It worked before we updated the state, and this wasn't one of the ones that seemed broken. But when I did D3js updates and shifted things around a little bit, it doesn't seem to render anymore. So I thought it would be kind of fun to do this on stream because I've off and on worked with D3js for years. I mean, I started using it like V1, V2, something like that. I don't quite remember. I remember I've definitely written articles for like V2 or V3 of D3js, which means that I was learning it before then. We're now on what, 7, 8? 7. So it's been through some changes, and I've definitely appreciated where they've taken the library and how they've changed it. So I wouldn't say any of it is inherently bad type of changes. Let's get this running. Let's get it running. npm run. We're not gonna run the app for right now. We're just gonna run the web app. For the most part, this is a web app, and the Tori app is sort of just a container for it at the moment. So if we do npm run, this is on a... It's actually not showing. Interesting. V20 of Node. It should be npm version 10, I think. It's interesting that I must have broke that at some point too in updates. Okay, so if you do npm run, the newer versions of npm will list all the scripts, which is really nice. So you can do npm run, and I got an alias, so we're gonna do an r start. Let's see where we're looking at right now. So this is where we're at. Oh, finally. What's oh finally? Oh, what is that? Open and reading mode. Interesting. So we got no chart here. Oh, the npm script thing? Yeah, no joke. I used to always just cat. And then, well, on Windows I was using bat. And then I ended up, when new shell came around, I wrote a new shell script to do it. I think my new shell script still works. I don't remember, but they added it, so like I don't need to even remember my new shell script, which is nice. All right, so it should be looking like, oh wait, no, this is on the next branch, I believe. Here. So this, I mean, there's not much there now. If we pull in, I think some of these examples still working. So we have a cache flow analysis. Basically, green is ins, red is outs, purple is transfers, and then your this balance of your account, the status of your account as time goes on. So with these typical repeating transactions, this is what your account balances would be, like day end type situation. But part of what I'm doing is I'm kind of slimming it down, and in this change I'm looking to, at least when the user is initially using it, sort of focus them in, establish the baseline things, and then we can, as we clean this up and make this more user approachable, I think I would say. Like, I understand this, but I've also been looking at this type of graph for years. So that doesn't necessarily mean that this graph speaks to everybody. So as somebody gets more used to understanding the data that they're looking at, and potentially as we make this more approachable, we will like put these behind feature flags. So that's the idea of this page. We'll sort of like feature flag these in / as the user like hits checkpoints kind of thing is my current thinking. But this is what still a bit of a rough chart, which is why it's on the next branch. But the idea here is that we're showing on the left side your income and on the right side your expenses. So it's sort of a, what are your ins and outs relative to each other? So we can see like your rent is a big chunk of both the expenses and your income. So that's kind of the idea behind this, is many of the articles that you read are around cutting your expenses. Like, stop going to Starbucks. Starbucks is expensive. Yes, but if it brings you happiness, it's potentially not a huge chunk of your income or relative to your expenses, where it might make sense to actually put more effort into, deeper considerations on the car you're buying or where you're living, or how you're using electricity or water potentially. So that's the idea behind this graph, is to help you make those type of decisions, like focus in on each expense and income piece and understand how they relate to each other and how that relativity affects your decisions. So, like going out or your fun here, it's not always the best idea to like cut those out completely, because you're a human being, and at the end of the day, your happiness is, if you don't have money, you're in trouble. But also, if you are just going through the day as a drone and not being happy, that's not a great situation to be in either. So this graph is all about relativity, but what we have is nothing right now. So let's deal with that. What I've figured out is that we have the SVG. I can make this just a little bit bigger. And we have a group. So G is basically the group in SVG. And what I did was group the incomes and the expenses. Just so what I'm drawing, making these all relative to each other, is just a little bit easier to handle or deal with. We're getting the first group, and we're getting nothing in that group, so we're not getting the categories either. So something is going wrong there, which is interesting because it didn't change anything, but also we've done a bunch of upgrades. So it's possible that something in D3js has changed in a breaking way, and I just did not catch it when I was doing upgrades. So we'll see if we have everything working as expected. We will see the SVG, a group for each of income and expenses, each of the like high-level categories. When you're entering in your accounts, I really would like to give this form some more attention. As you're adding in your accounts, you can give it a category, just for better visual grouping. So like in this case, the orange is your like W-2 paycheck. You get paid twice a month, beginning and middle of the month in this situation. But it's all sort of like one, as far as this chart is concerned, it's basically one chunk. Not sure what the idea behind retirement was. Oh, I think, I'm not sure why I have a retirement category. I guess that's the IRA. So I think the idea is I was bucketing that out as the whole left side, this highlighted part, is your gross income, or at least the income that you see after they've taken taxes out. So then I'm splitting it off into chunk that goes to retirement and chunk that goes to, like your expenses. Yeah, not sure what the idea, right? Clip. It's funny. So for anybody that's not aware, I've got a button that I can press to clip stuff, to sort of pull out pieces of the stream that are helpful, and I can drop those as shorts. There are streams where I'll clip like 10 or 20 things, and there'll be streams where I just completely forget. It's funny how at least my brain works that way sometimes. I need to add a command so y'all can just clip stuff for me if I forget. Okay, so we need groups. We're not getting groups, and that's as far as I got with the debugging. We have just the first group, and then we're not getting any other groups, which is curious. We do, let's see, we do only have one transaction right now. So if we added like an expense, are we getting the other expense in here? That would be a good thing to try. Add a transaction. We are going to put it in the account. Fun. Expense description. Going out. I need to set the default to today. The last time I touched this form, I would believe 2019. Actually, no, I think it uses the last the last day for the last transaction you entered. But this has been something that I've been working on for a while. And then this part of my form, I definitely want to like make clearer. But a lot of this was like, I knew these things and I was aware of these things, but with the way that we were managing state, there just wasn't an easy way to like handle any of it, and I was focusing all on that. So I didn't give the front end or the form entry the love that it really needed. Let's repeat this on the 12th of the month. Every month on the 12th, you go out. It's very specific. So now we should be getting a new group in here. Okay, so it's definitely doing the income and expense groups correctly. There seems to be an issue with the category though. I've also commented some of this out in my debugging. Yeah, so it's not going to do category because I have that actually commented out right now. Oh no, it should. Enter append. So this is the category. So for some reason the category is just not coming. It's not being rendered. I do also want to deal with this. Come back to that. But so group category enter. Group type. Group type would be income versus expense. Okay, so group type is this line right here is what's basically adding the income and expense groups. And then from there we're saying now we're going to append some more groups to each based on this data. We've attached the data to this, like, to the overall groups, and the data here is effectively saying with this data, use this function to pull out a subset of the existing data that's attached to this the parent node. And then group type. So this would be removing any of the groups that have gone away. And this should be adding the categories. So if we uncomment out this, because we're getting the group category enter. And this is the part that it's not super clear, and is the thing that we're putting a momentary pin in. Because I do want to come back to that. Because you can see I actually threw a log in here too. I want to come back to that because they've added a new join function, which I think is going to make that clearer. So you can see here, one of the things that I've sort of figured out over the years with D3js is that all of these functions that pull out from the data attached to the node a calculated value or a subset of the value, it's effectively just looping over these elements. So what you can also do in there is drop a log, and you'll be able to see as it's looping through all of the chunks of data that it's processing through. So here we're saying basically return this chunk of data. So it has data. The data is there. And we are setting a category D0. So the data should be there. But I suspected something with this. I suspect the enter, was it enter, exit? I thought there was one more. Enter. I thought there was like a transition or something, a transitionary one. Not seeing it though. Enter and exit, and I believe a transitionary one. I suspect over the, I don't know if it's, I would be surprised if it's over the minor updates, because D3js has been very good about being stable. So I would be surprised that they made a change in a minor version, because I'm pretty sure they follow Semper. But I'm wondering if, I think I did an upgrade from 5 to 7, and I'm wondering if potentially I missed a breaking change in there that subtly broke stuff, and I didn't notice all of them breaking. Or like, we're doing a bunch of nesting in here. Did something in there break and I just missed it when I was doing one of those major upgrades? So the thing that we're putting a pin in is, there is now, if we look at the D3 selection, there's a new dot join. So that's the thing that I kind of want to come back to. High level, if you haven't worked with D3js, there's a couple ways that you can set it up to work with, in this case, React. You can kind of break it down into maybe like 3 pieces, high level pieces. There is the functions that do like layout type calculations, or munging your data to get it in a way that it can be graphed more easily. Those are going to be the probably the data. That's going to be part of it. Some of those data ones actually too are that might even be considered fourth, getting or loading the data into the chart itself, or into the memory. So like D3 fetch, DSV, there's a CSV too, I think. Maybe that's part of DSV? Yeah. What does the D stand? Oh, delimiter. separated values. Okay, so this works for CSV, TSV. You can do custom delimiters. So there's a bunch of ways to get the data in. And once you get the data in, there is the like force or geo and interpolate. Those are taking the data and modifying that data and putting into a structure that can be more easily graphed or would fit a graph. Then once you have your data, then there is you need to start attaching it to nodes. So there's the selection. I guess, would I categorize those separately? There's selecting the node where you want to put them, and then there's actually the drawing of the nodes. So I guess it's kind of the same category, and that most of that falls under D3 selection. So once you have pulled in the data, selected the element, drawn the element, if you want to change the element over time, animation and interaction is probably where you're going to be looking. So animation would be either user interaction or data changes. You can then do like this enter exit, where the data is effectively, the chart is reacting to changes. So anyways, they've added this dot join function, which I don't ever remember being there. And here you can see here, they put the data in a underscore underscore data underscore underscore property, thus making the data sticky. So that's how they sort of enabled this bit. When you attach the data to like the kind of the top level node is what most snippets I've seen do. And then as you get deeper into the tree, you can use a function to like pull out the piece of the node that you care about for that specific part of the chart. So a good example would be, in this case here, we're making a string. So we want to pull out an element of our data that allows us to create the string to set the ID. Here we're setting the actual data, so in this case it's an object, which then is used later on. And you can see that starts to come up in this this cell section, where we're gonna comment that out to make it a little easier. Now at this point, we are working with effectively that object, this. And we can say, well, the category, we're gonna color things, or we're gonna use the D3 color function to automatically set colors based off of a defined color scale and a value, or scaling your chart. Okay, so I'm gonna switch to, I think this dot join is gonna make it clear. So even if this isn't the actual issue, I do want to switch to it because I think it makes it clear. Because what we then are able to do is this. And right now, we have this sort of like chained, this triggers this, which is fine, and it was the best that I could think of to organize it at the time. But it does take a little bit to like come back to and remember. And I don't know that it's immediately obvious to anybody looking at it, and I think this is a little bit more clear. So on join, we're going to do this thing, or on enter, excuse me, we're going to do this thing. On update, just update. On exit, remove the thing. I think that's going to be clearer. So enter, update, exit. Let's see if we can get that wired up. So we have our SVG. Our SVG is being passed into this function. We are, and I don't know if I like this use effect. I wrote this years ago. 2 years ago. I must have copy and pasted that too. I feel like it's probably longer than that. But anyways, it's grabbing a ref to what we set up just the SVG as a little DOM node, and effectively we're passing that off to D3js and having it work off of everything within the SVG. And theoretically, we might need to like use memo some of this, but theoretically, the idea is that this will be unchanged unless D3 is the thing doing the change. So React shouldn't be touching it, other than on mounting. So we pass in the ref, and that gets us. We set up a bunch of functions, sizing, and then that gets us to the point where we are doing d3.select, so that's selector method, grabbing the SVG, and then from there we can start doing our data. And on the SVG, in this case, we are going to have a variable number of G based on the data that we're pushing into it. And what we're effectively going to have is 2 categories. So we're giving it an array of 2 items. So we'll end up having 2 groups here. So let's see. So each group is going to have its own chunk of data. Now we want to, let's go back here. Once we have the data, we're doing a select all, and this is the it flip-flops them a little bit, which is interesting. So these pieces kind of end up moving up into this piece, which is interesting. So we have a select all data. I think we actually move like lines 76 to 85 bits of that up into the adjoin on the group type. A lot of this like organization is based off of how things chain together. And I think that was one of the trickier bits of D3js to wrap your head around. I think I'm going to just copy this bit actually here. I suspect that's going to be rather typical. And that will allow me to remove my exit. As in, my update is probably just going to be update, which is fine. And then here we will, we're going to append G. And then from there, we're going to be setting the attributes for the group type, which are going to be these. Now, so from group type, we now have, we can now do categories. So we don't need to do this bit anymore. Type D. This looks like the exact same thing. I feel like I'm doing that twice and I don't need to be. I suspect I can get rid of all of this. I'm gonna do this and that. And this. So now we have group category enter. I'm not going to need any of the exits. We'll just take all the exits out right away. So we're setting up the group type. on enter we're appending a G, update, and then on exit we're removing. And then with that group type we're setting an ID and an attribute, which are exactly the same for potentially the other piece of it too. So here we are setting up the categories based off of the groups. So now we sort of like split out. We've got two parts of our tree. So that our array of 2 items is now 2 groups. And within each group, we're going to select all of the G's and then set the data for each one of those. So the first item, I guess those actually do make sense. The first item is going to be the ID, and the second item is going to be the value. I don't know about that. Let's log this out. Return D. And console.log D and return D. I'm gonna hide all this and let's see where we're at. I'm gonna just take out this bit because that's not really helping us anymore. And let's see where we're at. What are we gonna get? Render. Okay, we're getting intern map. Interesting. I don't know that I need to Are we still getting the... Okay, so our ID and our transform appear to be correct here. So I think our group type is good. So from our group type, we're selecting all. And then... I don't know that we actually need this anymore. Let's see what we get with that. Still nothing. So our data D is an intern map, which appears to be so you can animate, enter, update, and exit by creating transitions inside. And see, like, they didn't actually remove these. What is specifically the benefit source? Appends, removes, and reorders elements as necessary. That was previously bound by the selection.data. All right, so the data that's coming in is, okay, we got an element. Got it. I think that's right. So what's happening is we're getting an array. The first element is like the key, and the second, it's like a, call it a hash map, I guess. I don't know my CS terms offhand. The first element is a key, and the second element is like the function. So I think this is valid. I'm gonna remove this. So now this is going to give us a situation where we can call join again. We are going to be doing, we're appending G's, update, and removing. Okay. Okay, we got one more G, so we're making progress. I don't like that as a space in there, but we might come back to that. We'll say replace G with this. Okay. Might as well just deal with it now. Now that ID has a dash in there, which we might need to deal with later on if we're pulling information back out, but it's fine for now. Okay, and when I saw this join function, what I liked about it is it changes how you organize your code, and it chunks together the way that you end up abstracting it, groups it together in a way that I think makes more sense, or at least it does to me. We're dealing with a group type. We are selecting all the elements in there and attaching data to it. We're handling the enter, update, exit. So handling the animation all within this join function, and then these are setting the attributes. And then within there, we're now doing categories. Same exact thing. And here we're gonna do the same exact thing. Within each group category, we are going to do we need another append G? I don't think so. Because once we get into the cell, we are okay. We also have text, so we do need a G. So group category enter. We're going to I guess we only really want one G. Dot join. And this, we're gonna switch that to select. I think with how join is handling this now, I think that's the way to do it. So this will give us from within each category group, we're going to select one G. What did we have before? Okay, so we've got category. I guess we just have the one. So within the category, we're doing a rect. If we look at like the paycheck, yeah, we're just rendering it all in that same box. So I think we can go straight to the rectangle actually here. I'm going to do select all rectangle, and then we're doing append the rectangle, update exit, and then I think we start taking out bits of this actually. So the data I believe is going to end up being this again. And I don't think we need that ID anymore, because we already have the groups drawn. So we are drawing both in this case we're drawing both the cell and the text. I might need to change, because we end up drawing two elements here. I might need to tweak this, but select all recs, set the data, join. I think it'll be fine. Okay. So this bit is part of our cell. here. And within there, we had a enter append rect transition. So on enter, we are doing a transition. So I think what we end up doing then is just calling transition here. So this will do like the tweening from into the out. We've defined the like location, the fill, and the width and height, and it'll go from non-existent, handle all the tweening, all of the like keyframes in between to the endpoint. So this should give us a cell, which will mean that we have rectangles. Nice. Okay, so now we have rectangles. This is, you can see we don't really have any values attached to this, and we didn't before. I've got the text and the rectangle as siblings within the DOM, which I think it'll be fine. Now the bit that I wasn't quite sure on is I think I can effectively do the same here for the text. So in this case, we are doing a select all. See? So what's our D? Let's look at our D. We've got an array of one item. What is that on 105? I'm going back and forth if I need select or select all. We'll dig into that in a sec. Let's see if we can get the text working. Now what we were doing is we were building it off of the cell before, and then we were doing an append. I think we could actually do that again. So cell is going to be, I don't really need to do a select, I don't think. So I think what I can do is this. It's going to be the same chunk of data. And we're going to say, is it text? Update, remove, and then attributes. And then we're additionally appending more information. So, enter.append. Can I just stick this right in here? I think I can potentially do this. T-span. I'm not quite sure what I was doing here. And that's entirely possible that it just was not working as I expected it to. You know how you like write some code and then you come back to it a day or two later and you're like, oh, what was I doing? I feel like it's substantially worse when you come back to it months and years later. Yeah, we definitely broke that part of it. So if we take out this, we get our text. I did appear to see a transition. Okay, we have a rectangle. So something is select text. I'm gonna switch this to select. I'm not quite sure what it's gonna do. It's dependent on the data. Oop, select text. I don't want the value, I want the string. I don't know if you can see it on the stream, but it is rendering in real quick. Okay, so what's happening is we have the income and we have the transaction. The rectangle is being rendered twice and is being rendered as a sibling to the group. So it's being rendered as a sibling here. No, it's being rendered as a sibling here. Trailing garbage. Interesting. Okay. So, I think this is good. And I think this is also good. We're returning D, and then we're joining, and we're setting attributes. We're not specifically setting any data here. Could that very well be it? Data text. I think that's right. If we look at, oh no, I guess it always sets data. There's you can either give join a bunch of functions, or you can say join circle. So we select all the circles, basically like pre-selecting them and saying, hey, we're gonna have a bunch of circles based off of this data. And then we're gonna join on the circles. And by setting it as a string, yeah, so that just default appends. So theoretically, these are mostly the same as the defaults. We could just remove this and this, and it would be exactly the same. The transition, I think we need to leave this one in here because it has the transition, which is different than the default. So, the data though. See, we're building it off of cell. So I think what I'm actually going to say is let's do this. Well, let's make sure that we're getting our rectangle in there still. First step. G rectangle, G rectangle. So something changed here. Is it this transition? Because that was just working, wasn't it? Select all. That's what it was. Okay, and I said let's come back to it. I think this is the time to come back to it. So there's a select and there's a select all. If we looked at the selection, there is a select and a select all. Selects the first element that matches the specified selector. So select is grabbing just the first element. If there's multiple, it's going to select the first one. So when we have this set to select, we're saying within the group, select the first rectangle, and this is going to be the data. This data, I think, is an array. Even though that array has one single piece of data. So we've got some nesting that we don't necessarily need here. So what I'm going to say is this might have an extra nested array that is not necessary. Removing may allow us to use a select. So if the data that we were giving it was an object or other primitive, a primitive other than something that you can iterate over, then the select I think would work fine. But what is happening is it's a combination of the data and your selection, where a select all is going to be returning an array of potential items, even if there's only one item in that array, and your data needs to match that. So knowing that, I think we can use this again. Let's give that a shot. Let's just see what happens. Rectangle. Okay, so we're not getting any text. Oh, okay, we do still have the transition on here. Good. Let's take this out. So here we are doing a cell select text. So the cell then needs to be a single value, which should cell will be returning and this is where I wonder like if TypeScript or something would help us. Keeping track of this isn't always the easiest. I think with this new way that it's being organized, it's a little bit easier to keep track of. Select all is going to give us an array. We're looking through an array, attaching the data. So if we look at group category enter, that's also going to, or if we look at cell, that's also going to be an array. So we need to select all. Same exact situation though, but in this case, now I think our data is going to be D. Console.log D, return D. Come back to this a little bit. So we are getting a log of D, and it matches up with the text here. So like these should be then correct, and we're appending the text. Do we get any text though? Is that coming through? Let's see it yet. So it's not actually coming through. Join, enter, append, text, transition. Let's try taking out the transition. I just want to make sure this part's working at least. Okay, rect. Select all text. I think our data is good. Oh, our data is only going to be one element. So I think this is actually right, because if we look at the thing that's being logged out, it's a single object. So I think we can do select text. I still don't see any text there. Well, we're getting text. There's just no values there. Okay. Let's try doing a transition. I don't think this is gonna make a difference, but it's logging out twice. We've got two transactions. See data ID. Interesting. So it is running it twice because it's doing it based off of cell. We're gonna have to come back to that. Let's double check here though. We are setting, if we look at the element, we are getting an x value, no y value, and no internal value. What happens if we do this? Okay, so now we have a T-span in there. Is T-span is that a text span within a NaN? Something though. And they're there. Okay. MDN SVG. Is T-span the way you do text within a SVG? It's been a little bit since I actually looked at the SVG downloads. Text. So text can just straight away be values. If text is included in an SVG not inside of a text element, it is not rendered. Okay, and what's a T-span? A T-span defines a subtext within a text. It allows for adjustment of the style and the position of the subtext as needed. Okay, so potentially what we have is good. What this is doing is it's rendering 3 pieces of text, and it's doing that because it's setting the x and y differently for each, with different classes. We could potentially do a single piece of text with a single x and y, and use T-span to change the classes or something. So I think I'm okay with the T-span. We aren't getting the values there though. So if we look at 129, we're still getting an array. We're still getting an array there. So, and I think that's because of this up here. Because cell is an array, we need to select all here. Okay, so if we look at 130, we are getting the object here. Are we getting text? Rectangle? No. Okay, so here we're doing an append text. If we do just this bit, rectangle. See, now this is interesting. I think this Y and X feel fine here, as do those. And we're doing an enter.append text. So this should continue just appending pieces to that T-span. And this should all be based off of D. We are at line 130 logging out D, and D is the object. So if we did this as select, this is going to give us this. So we could do that here in this case. Ooh. Ooh. Okay. We have cell. If we select the first element in the cell, we get this. And the first element has some data attached to it, of which is the key and array. We want the second element in that array, which is the data, and that is related to an object. So now if we look here, we are getting text. And that text has a single tspan, which is C data. And so what's happening here is we're actually getting, it's nesting on us, which we don't want. Instead, what we want, and that's why we had it separate here. We want to append each separately to the text element. I guess what we do is we say enter const tnode, text node. So then we can say text node append this, text node append this. I'll come back to the transition. I don't know when or if we're going to need that transition, but I think this will then say append the text. This is going to give us then that text node returned, in which case we can append the tspan to each. I'm not seeing any data there, so that might not be the way to do it. Text, tspan, okay. So those look good. They're coming in. But what's happening is text is not coming in. Return tnode. So my suspicion here is after we enter, join is going to be like returning an element. If it's a void, these values aren't going to have any effect on it. But we want the enter to return the text node, in which case we can then add additional attributes to that text node, I think is what's happening. There we go. So now, placement wise, is it rendering as we would expect? So we have an income. What if we add an expense? Expense fun. We are going to repeat daily for 10. Division by 0. Nice. I might have broke it now. And this is this kind of error handling. That should get a lot easier. A lot easier to do with the new way we're going to be handling the state. Expense cycle daily for 10. Fun. Add. Go. Failed to execute insert before on node. And this is where we're starting to test the dot join. Failed to execute insert before on node. The new child element contains the parent. Interesting. So if we, I didn't have an update anywhere, which felt odd. But I'm just curious what happens if we do that. Okay, we seem to need the updates. Can't say that's unreasonable. Okay, and I don't think I removed the examples. Yeah, so if we do load, those are not loaded based off of my feature flags effectively. So that's not going to be. I was trying to see if we could get more transactions in here to look at as a default. So if we add it as an income, is it going to work? Daily cycle. Oh, 1. Okay. So what's happening is we've got a oh wait. So this is uncategorized. I honestly am kind of okay with that. So what's happening then is when we go to add, I heard stuff outside. I think it was a UPS truck, very loud. If we add an expense, we're adding an additional group, and that ends up causing issues here. So how we're handling it right here might not actually be the correct way to do it, but we're getting the values as we would expect. The income is on the wrong side, which is a little bit awkward, but I think that's just a matter of not having any, it doesn't have any expenses. So I think it's rendering it as far right as it can go, basically. So and like these seem fine. They seem fine. I'm guessing it has to do with like the scaling, just because we don't have expenses there. And we probably do want to come back to and clean that up a little bit. But let's. Okay, so we have got 2 incomes in here right now. If we delete this one, it's updating as expected. So it's specifically when we add another group. So SVG select all data grouped. And we are doing append. So our unique categories. That's being piped into there. Okay, so grouped. Grouped is giving us, I'm guessing, an array. Well, we can actually look on the DOM element itself. We have added it to, looks like the SVG. So if we look at, where do we see that? It's been a while since I looked. Styles, layout. Properties? Properties. Yeah. I think this is where it ends up showing up. So if we look at the G and we have a data. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So when we add another G off of the SVG, select all G based off the data. So if we look in grouped, that should be an array. Okay, we get income, and that's it. These are being logged out twice, I think, because did I? Pretty sure I enabled strict mode. So in strict mode, for better or worse, it tries to prevent you from writing code in which you have it's what side effects on React strict mode. It runs your it activates additional checks. Okay. Okay, this I think is, there's a render and a commit. Yeah, so sometimes depending on like how you're running your side effects, things can become rather non-deterministic, which I have seen and is very painful to deal with once you've gotten to the point where you're so deep into it. You have so many like use effects everywhere. It's not easy to unravel that, and it's easy to get yourself into that situation because it seems to work. You write a use effect and then the things seem to render how you're expecting it to. So the idea behind it is that I think it fires off these effects twice, which only in development fires them off twice, so that. And that's why we're seeing 2 logs, so that you don't necessarily become dependent on these side effect life cycles happening in sort of like the side effects landing in a specific way that always ends up working. Oh, I didn't even realize that was on the old ones too. Does it have anything new on strict mode? Strict. I feel like there's probably a better explanation. Yeah, to find bugs caused by impure rendering. Sounds like a good way to say it. And it reruns effects in extra time to find bugs caused by missing effect cleanup. So this, we've got it in use effect for better or worse. And actually, I think I could do that as a use memo because this is only going to change when the data changes. Let's try that real quick. Ixnay on the render A. Draw and draws async. I don't remember how you use memo handles it versus yeah, okay. Oh, interesting. I might just go back to use effect and deal with it later. Yeah. There's also some like hot modular reloading stuff that goes on too. Let's deal with that later. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole too much. I should be able to remove the use effect there though. Coming. Okay. So, we've seen 2 logs. 2 logs because of strict modem. Quite certain that that's where that's coming from. We are doing a group type, a group category, a cell, and then text. The text has additional appends of the dspan in there, and then we're returning t node, which is that text appended text node, so as to also add styles and attributes to it. I do wonder if I could just pull this out too. But on every update, I don't want it to append a new one. I want it to be that text. So I think we're gonna leave that. We're getting grouped, which is one of these 74. Yep, one of these intern maps. And that is the piece that gets passed to data. So when we get a new or updated piece of data there, that is when we're hitting this render error. So let's clear that out, refresh. You can see, like, the sense of recalculating a bunch of times. It'll be nice to clean up this state. HMR is short for the sound you make when it doesn't work. Oh, right. I like hot module reloading, and it's cool to see it change immediately, especially when you're doing like CSS type stuff. And especially, I don't know, they have what, a whole bunch of versions now, but one of them like re-renders just pieces of it to where your state stays, and that's great and awesome. But then you get these sort of situations where it's like, hey, I got it working, I saved it and it works, and then you hit refresh and then it doesn't work, and you're like, oh, what happened? The sound of the refresh breaking after you thought you had it working. Okay, let's add in a new node, and let's make well, you know that it's not working. Let's see if we can figure out what the issue is. All right, we're gonna add in. I can't remember if I need it to repeat or not, so we're just gonna make it repeat. Okay, so we're getting a failed to execute insert before on node. The new child element contains the parent. So when we submitted that, we got a recalc. I'm just by default logging that out right now to make it a little bit more obvious to me when I was changing the state. We're getting an updated intern map, which isn't an array. Does that mean I need to do something with let's go back and look at our selection. We have the high level ones. We've got select. So select is for, though they have their example is the SVG, selecting a single anchor. So here we're looping, or we're grabbing all of the paragraphs and adding in event listener. And when that's clicked, we can grab the target from that event and then style it. So select all would give us all the elements that specify this, that match the specified selector string. I think that's what we want. So now is there a .data section? Filter. Filters the selection, returning a new selection. Okay. Don't have a use case for that. Style node. Okay. Joining data. Data is specified for each group in the selection. Okay. So if the selection has multiple groups, which is what we have, at least later on, data should typically be specified as a function, which is what we have. What happens if we do this? We've kind of shifted everything up. That was the one piece that we didn't really shift up. We attached the data to the group, like the top level group. And that worked when there was one. I don't know if I need to change that to a function though. We're just gonna take it out for the moment. Let's see what we're working with. I suspect things are gonna just break. We have an SVG. That SVG does have a data. Interesting. So it's a single array. Does that mean basically our data is going to be this now? Do we shift everything up? I don't know if that's the right call, but I'm not going to bail out just yet. We might need to adjust our selection there. Let's go ahead and add another transaction and let's see what our data then looks like. Repeat every day for 10. Description. Go. Okay. Interesting. So our data is attached to SVG. What do we get if we log out this? I'm gonna say return D. Guess I didn't need to do that. Console.log D. What are we looking at for our data here? We will be logging out on line 79. So we have an array. And for each of them, we're going to have an intern map. So that would mean that we would want to do this, right? I think what was happening then was our data is then nested differently further down the line, which makes sense. So here we're doing, and actually this might be coming back to this bit right here. So on line, oh, we're not even getting that far. Line 112. So if we've attached the data to the SVG, now we are I don't think we're gonna have time, but I kind of want to look at the intern map more. I think that might be the subtle thing that's changed, is the way the data attachment and selection has changed, because it used to, intern map is new to me. We'll put it that way. This feels right. I suspect this is no longer right. There's log all the data all the way down. So at 96, we're saying grab the second value of that array. So that still feels fine, but when you get to 115, that's when we start having issues. Partly because here we are calling replace. I bet you this is now D. Should I actually? Okay, so if we look at 96, 96 is default transaction in array. I'm actually going to switch it to this. Default transaction. Okay. What are we working with right here? So logging at each of these places seems to be fine as a way to understand how each of the data pieces are like flowing through, but as like an overall, especially like this type of situation, not amazing. Not an amazing experience. So should this just be D then? This is D, and that's D1. On line 95, it is saying, okay, line 96, we're logging out D. Okay. So on line 79, we have an array. I might actually put a second, yeah. So this, I feel like the thing that at least I've always personally spent the most time on when I'm writing D3js code, especially it's fine for like simple charts, and some of these piecing together separate functions into overall chart works fine. But if you are doing more deeply involved charts with nested data, making sure your data is flowing through in a way that you understand seems to be sort of a paramount thing. You get that right, and then the chart just sort of comes out correctly. Okay, we are using D3.group. We are grouping the transactions into types and then categories. So we're grouping them by type and then category. So if we look at D3group, what does that have as far as documentation goes? D3. group. Groups the specified iterable of values into an intern map from key to array value. To get the elements. Okay. So when we have a group, then we can do dot gets. So now that we have an iterable, groups equivalent to group, but it returns an array of key value entries instead of a map. Ah. So if we say D3 groups, what does that give us? That actually feels like it may work better for our situation. Because we don't necessarily need interesting. All right. That might actually work better. So we now have, we've attached the data. And at group type, we are logging out D. So on line 79, what does our data look like? 79, we get one item in the array, in income, and a value. So let's see, line 79. We want to set the data for that group to be D1. And now on line 96, we are getting default transaction, and that should also be a D1. So now on line 105, we are getting an object. We don't need to return that anymore, and we might be able to do, let's try select. We might have gotten rid of that nested array there, so I'm just going to take that out for the moment. I don't know if I need to do return D there. I think that might be unnecessary. Okay, line 96. What's our error? We're getting an error on line. Okay, so line 105. Okay, line 105 should be all my nesting is changed in here, which is making this a little bit confusing. Trailing garbage. We're getting a G and a whole bunch of rectangles. Okay. All right. Let's think about this. We have an SVG. If we look at the SVG has a data property. It's going to have an array of items. We are going to say select all G and attach the data to them. And the data is going to be a D1. So each element, each G should then have, well, we can also look here. So each G, oh, wait, this is not, Oh, okay. So grouped. look at that type. We are grouping by type and then category. Groups is going to return us an iterable. The iterable is going to be, did I read that wrong? So it's going to return, oh, that should be, okay. I'm actually going to switch back to this. Now that our data is nested differently, I think this is actually the way to go. Okay, so we have an SVG, no data attached to it. G has a piece of data attached to it. That data is the ID and the nested data. So here we're going to say we are selecting just the data for that piece. So that's going to give us G. So this has, and these rectangles are not all, those are all nesting incorrectly right now, so we'll have to deal with that. But within here, we now have the key and the piece of data. So when we're going to do the cells, a rectangle right now that's just getting D. So within transaction, we do want to render all of those pieces. So if we would say select all, re-render, we're getting some text in there that looks better. We are getting a transaction. The rectangles are being grouped properly. The rectangles have, okay. It's rendering each. So we have select rectangle. We want to select a single rectangle and within this group we have, oh, we have a nested array. So G, we're at our G, we're selecting the second piece of data, which is going to be, oh, that's awkward. So 96, line 96 is income and then an array. So when we are setting the data for each node, we are sending it to this and then that. So line 116 is that. And we want to set the data as this. Okay. Did I re-render? So now we have, okay, so that's weird. Oh, no. It was just expanded. We have the data here. So it looks fine. Rectangle has data. But we are getting default transaction. Okay, so default transaction has the data. So the rectangle is, I'm actually gonna take these enters off. That's also not being helpful anymore. Group type, group category. So off of group category, we're going to select the rectangles, and then we're appending the rectangles. Those should be select all. This select, I feel like there's something in here that I'm just not quite, I'm overlooking. And I think as I dive into it more, it's going to be clear. But it has been too long for me to remember why that is not behaving how I'm expecting it to. Okay. So we now have switched the grouping to D3.groups, which instead of an intermap, we are getting now the data as an array. I'm kind of just like looping through and rendering each piece of it. And then at the end of it, we're returning the SVG node, which we don't really use, but it's fine. So this actually technically has a return. So now that our data has switched from this intern map into an array, I believe we can say, let's try adding an expense that repeats daily for $10. Okay, so we get a recalc and we're getting an immediate error at line 81. So it's on data grouped. Is this still not returning data in a way that I'm expecting it to? So line 74 is an array. Okay, so now if I would add a transaction of type income, daily value 10, that still appears to work. We now have one income with two types of transactions. So now if I add another transaction in here with a type expense, daily for value 10, we get an error. So we have an income and an expense, and they each have their own So that is interesting because we are throwing the error at line 82. So basically this data here that we're passing does not like. I'm going to try this again. And I don't know that it's going to be D1, but let's take a look. So on line 79, we are logging out an income and an array. And we're passing D1. So then on line 96, we are logging out a key and data. So we're passing D1. And then on line 116, 105? Where's 105? Okay. So here's, yep, that makes sense. So then on line 116, that is just D. We're getting error in 104. So 105 should be, I feel like I need to be really careful about. So some of this data we're basically like reusing twice. And I think that's part of what's making this a little bit more difficult. Line 96 is an array. So then that means that this data access is fine because it's expecting an array with a key. And then here we are expecting the object here. So then when we get to line 116, we don't get to line 116. D0.replace is not a function. So 96. Is that the one that I'm missing? Oh, this is... G. I feel like we are so very close. So we're attaching data to the SVG. So if we look at SVG, we have see that's not what I expect. Let's look at the groups. I'm expecting, yeah. If more than one key is specified, each value would be nested be a nested array of key value entries. So if we have one element, okay, let's check this. If we have one SVG, or if we have one type, we get a single piece of data with the type and then the array of data. If I don't know if it's gonna let me, but if we would go in here and say expense, now we should have two pieces of data. It's still income. Possible that the error is just not letting it recalculate. But line 74. This does some like unrolling. I think that's the piece that I'm overlooking. So when you do d3.select, you are selecting, there's either select or select all. Select all is giving you multiple elements and you're attaching each piece of the data to each element. When you do D3 select, you're grabbing the first element, you're attaching the first piece of data to that element. So in reality, we do want this. So now we're saying we are going to select all of the groups, attach for each group, we're going to attach the piece of data to it. Then when we have that group, we are going to say the context of this is a key, which represents the group type. Or excuse me, when we have this, we're going to have a key, which represents the group type. and we are passing the full data to it. So then when we get to line 92, we should have when we get to line 92, we have an array key Okay. Let us. I don't know that I'm was understanding join perfectly. Partly because what it was doing was slightly hidden. So we're logging out line 74. We have an array of arrays. We are attaching that group to the group type. So the group type is going to give us a type G, or a G element with this ID. That ID is coming from this. So this piece here is filling out the group type. That makes sense. So then for each node, we are then attaching a piece of that data to it, which would be, in this case, like the income. So if we say add transaction and we say expense, now we get a type of G income and G expense, each having an array. So now when we get to group category, we are saying select all the groups. The data that we're going to attach to that node is going to be this. So in that case, we need to say D1. And we are saying that we're going to set the type key and that. So that seems fine. I think we're good there. So we have a type default transaction, and on this group, so group category, we have data that is an array. Again, with key and data attached to it. So we're attaching D1. So we're attaching this data to it. And we can set the attributes based on that data. So then when we are drawing the rectangles, we are going to, in this case, we have an array. We are giving it, G has the data that's attached to it is a key and then an array of data. So when we do select all and look at the data in the parent, line 112 is going to be that array, which is why we need to do the select all. But there's only one element in that array, which is the object. So then we are saying, well, attached that object, which is going to be D, Okay. G has key. No, G has this and this. So then when we go here, we have this and this. So then when we get to rectangle, we're going to just have the object. So I think we need to do return D there. Let's try that. Let's see if we're on track here. So we have G, which has G is attaching this piece of data. So group category has the key and the data attached to it. And we're returning D1, so it'll end up being wait. This is where I get confused. And that I think is where my error is coming up. So like we're passing all this data down. We have to this G we're attaching income and data. To this we're attaching the category and data. So then when we do, so group type is going to have attached to it a category and a data. So when we say on line 92, we are saying to each of these G nodes attach one of the pieces of the array data. So we get a bunch of G's that have this, the categories. So the category then has a key and then the value, and we're passing the array of data here. So we're selecting all the rectangles. So line 112 should be D1, because we again want to attach all of that data to it. Okay. We're getting there. So this has attached to every one of these categories the key and the related data. It's sort of unnecessary, but every rectangle has the object attached to it. But in this case, let's see, we are logging out line 112. Or excuse me, we're logging out line 112. Default transaction. We are giving it D1. Yeah, there's like an extra nesting in there. That feels really odd. Is there an extra nesting in there and it's just like confusing the heck out of me? Okay, so data is, so when we get here, okay. Yeah, on rectangle we've got D's. Okay, that looks good. D1. Because what we're saying is here we have the key, which is going to set the ID, and then we've got and then we're attaching to each of the rectangles that piece of data. So each piece of data here, based off the select all, is going to be one of those objects. Got it. So then when we get to the text, Oh my, okay. So then when we get to the text, we are building off of the cell. The cell has already... The cell is a single piece of data, and we are attaching that single piece of data to it. So we don't need to do D1 here. I think we just do D. Let's see if I get that right. So now we've got a rectangle, and we've got two pieces of text. Yeah, okay. So I think the change here actually is... if we run it off of the group category, and 135 is going to again be this, and we can do D1 like that. And I think I need to switch that to a select all. Okay, so it's not actually being select all. So here we're doing an append G, and we're doing an append, enter append G. So from group category, we want to select all. There. I think there's some extra nesting in there that I don't need, and that's just making this like extremely confusing. So when I go back through and muck around with the state somewhere, I think I'm gonna try to pull this out a little bit, because this I think is doing way more than we needed to, or at least the grouped and unique. Maybe not the unique categories, but the grouped and... yeah, this grouped is definitely feels like it's doing more nesting than it needs to. Okay, so now if we go like this, we're gonna have to call it here pretty soon, but remove this. This should give us a chart that when we call... oh, I still have one in there. 197. Yep, right here. Okay. So now when I call the recalc function again with a new expense, I'm going to do a daily value of 10. I thought we had it. What? Do we have anything graphing? Well, this is probably still the old state because it's throwing an error. DOM exception, failed to execute insert before on node. The new child element contains the parent. And is that something to do? So we're setting the data here and then doing join. It has got to be something with this join. Control flow, selection.call. Okay, so select all, append, select all data. So once it sets the data, every time it accesses the data afterwards, it's doing a function, which makes sense. Join. So anytime we do data, we do join. And we kind of have this select all, data join, select all, data join. the first thing that this does is, and see, some of this too is you look at these docs, it seems like it's a little better now, but I remember back in the day that you sort of had two situations. You had a draw the graph on load and you don't ever touch it, never changes, and you have a graph that automatically updates, and they were written different enough that you had to be careful, and copying and pasting was definitely not the way to go. So these are equivalent, right? And we're doing a select all data join. So this is doing a, and like there's no indication of what data is here, which is kind of okay. But also I feel like that's sort of an important bit of a lot of this. Okay, here, this one has data. So if I say we are doing a D3 select, that gives us the SVG as a selection. We should be doing an exit here, right? Because we're selecting all the G's and then we're appending G's. So this should also remove them. So what would be causing this error? DOM exception failed. I'm going to look on GitHub for this real quick. I don't know if it's actually gonna. There's a lot of D3. So let's see if we can go like this. Search network. Except I can't do code search at the moment because I am not signed in with this profile. So the nice part about having a single repository is it makes searching for or otherwise checking the issues much easier. Okay, that was a while ago. And it's like, this is what we're doing. So what am I missing? We're doing a select of the SVG, and then from the SVG we are doing a select all G. Where is that error coming up? Do we have any indication on? Selection.order, selection.join. So it happens in the join. We can try doing this. Let's just see what happens. I don't know that it's gonna make a difference. But it's worth a shot. Failed to execute insert before. So it appears to be happening at that join. But the question is, why? Does that not actually need an enter and exit? That feels weird. I'm sort of just testing stuff out and seeing if I can narrow down. Yeah. No. Okay, so next definitely needs the join because it doesn't have the then. If it doesn't have the join, it doesn't actually render it in the first place. So it definitely needs that. Let's check the notebook real quick. See if I get a sort of higher level thing that'll make it a little bit more easy to see what I'm doing wrong here. So what this is doing is it's saying create an SVG, which should be equivalent to, we have an SVG as a D3 selection. Then it's doing a svg.select all text, assigning data and joining on it, which is exactly what we're doing. So this one continues to update. We get an SVG, and it's saying svg.transition. Interesting. And then it's doing a join. So it's saying, okay. Is this the bit that we were missing? Is it the transitions that it was not happy about? svg.select all is not a function. Okay. I think we're gonna have to call it in a minute here. Unfortunately, I would have liked to deal with this last little bit here. We're close. We have a graph now though, and we're using the new join syntax, which is nice. And I think this does read a lot better. And it has. I've spent a long time debugging D3js and passing this data correctly. Some of it is, in this case, some of it is how the data is nested, which was making it a little bit unclear. But like this reads so much better. So this is doing an SVG, select all, data. It's giving it data and then doing a function. Is that how you handle the actual data changing? Description, expense, cycle, daily, 10. We didn't throw an error. We got an expense. And we got a rectangle. It's just off of our graph. That's fine. We can deal with the translations. If D0 is income, I'm gonna set it to 0. So basically our translations are off. Translate 0, 0, translate. Okay, SVG class, mAuto. Object center. So our SVG seems fine, but the transforms are off. They look the same. So something moved. I bet you it's inside of it. With height transform. So those translate, those don't translate. So the rectangles translate. Okay, so the translation is weird. That might just be a copy and paste issue. Cause yeah, if cell, or if it is income, width. Okay, I'm fine with that. So that was it. We needed a data and then a function. That was not terribly obvious. It's good to know, and it's something that I'm probably not going to forget. Do they have a dot data? Where did the dot data go? So there's selection, selector, select all. I don't remember where it is now. And it's probably in here somewhere. Oh, okay, here, data, dot data. And they do have a function here. If data is not specified, this method returns the array of data for the selected elements. Okay. So I might be able to remove some of those data pieces. No, because I'm always setting the further key down the line. So maybe not. I definitely didn't notice it reading through here. Good that we figured it out though. I gotta get going here. We gotta call it a day. We figured it out. I need to deal with my translation. That seems slightly off. I already switched actually. I pulled it up on the screen. Translation is slightly off. Not a big deal. I think it was just copy and pasting, and I copy and pasted the wrong translation function, which is totally cool. Easy fix. We got graphs. We have the values. We have all the data coming through, and I think this is going to give me enough to start to work on the other graphs. That might be something we do on stream actually. Once I get this like wrapper state in place, I can start swapping out the existing state, handling things more in a more async manner, and graphing everything. So it should be fun. And we also have an inventory app, so we can wrap all this whole thing up, and maybe we'll see what testing looks like with this. But we made it work. Sweet. Okay, I gotta go. Have a good rest of the week. We will see you, I think, next Tuesday. Right? Yeah, we'll see you next Tuesday. Bye.